Hello everyone, it's Maha. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Tarot and Astrology. So in part 3 of this series, we looked at the 12 astrological archetypes and their corresponding major arcana cards. In part 4 of this series, we looked at the decans in astrology and what they are. Now, in the part 5, in this video, we're going to begin looking at the minor arcana cards and their astrological correspondences to the 36 decans. So my intention in creating this series is not to teach astrology, but rather to use the language of astrology to perhaps look at the cards through a different set of lenses. And my hope is that this is going to engage and stimulate your own insights and revelations into the cards. I'm always learning and growing with my knowledge and practice in tarot, so I welcome your comments and your thoughts. Please share them with me as we go along on this journey together, because your contributions are just as valid and important as mine. So let's begin. It is commonly believed that the minor arcana cards represent the everyday events in our lives, as opposed to the archetypal energies which correspond to the major arcana cards. Similarly, as planets shift and move around on a daily basis in the sky, they relate us to that everydayness of the minor arcana cards associated with the 36 decans. Now, as planets complete their orbits in the sky, they fall into different signs. In some signs, they're going to feel a certain affinity with that sign. They're going to feel comfortable there, they're going to feel welcome there and really good there. And then in some other signs, they are not going to feel good. They're going to feel very far away from home. They're going to feel maybe isolated. So in astrology, this is called essential dignity. And for the purposes of this video, we're going to talk about 3 of the 5 essential dignities, which are rulership, exaltation, and face. So a planet is in rulership when it rules over that sign. So for example, Mars in Aries is in rulership, or the moon in Cancer is in rulership. Exaltation. A planet is exalted, it shines, it feels really good in certain signs, and it's treated like an honored guest. It gains a lot of strength there in that sign. And then lastly, face. So when a planet rules over a decan, this is known as a face. There are 36 decans in the zodiac, so 36 faces referring to a planet in a decan, in a sign. And each face corresponds to a minor arcana card, which we're going to explore in this video. Now, decans go back to the ancient times, and they consider the 7 planets from Sun to Saturn, and they do not include the transpersonal planets Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune. These transpersonal planets are very slow-moving, and they affect us more collectively as opposed to personally. To me, each minor arcana card represents a certain aspect of a planet in a sign. Sometimes that can be the lower octave or the shadow aspect of that planet in a sign, and sometimes that is the higher octave of the planet in a sign. But there are numerous possibilities within the spectrum of the planet in a sign and how it can manifest. And we're looking at just one glimpse of a certain element within that planet in a sign. And that's what we're going to explore in this video. And then lastly, just a couple of other notes. One, that I am using the astrological associations given by the Order of the Golden Dawn. There are other systems, and this is the system that I learned with and the system that I practice. And then, although I have followed sort of a structure in creating this video and all the other videos in this series, my method mainly with regards to everything is first and foremost more intuitive. So in other words, I may focus on certain cards more than other cards. This doesn't mean that some cards are not as important or less important. It's just that this is what I felt guided to do. And I will be sometimes referring to numerology, and sometimes I'll feel that I need to focus on color correspondences. So again, a lot can be said about each card, even only focusing on its astrological correspondence. So if you are interested in digging even deeper, I have a book in the description menu that I'm referring to and I'm quoting from in this series called 36 Faces. And that is a great book if you want to kind of dig deeper and find meanings in the images of the decans from a variety of sources. And lastly, I'm having major allergies right now, so my voice will be cracking a little bit as I speak, so hopefully that won't be too distracting. And with that, we are ready to begin. Let's switch the camera and go over to the table. So as I stated before in this series, all of what I will present to you is my own personal and intuitive approach to tarot and astrology, inspired by books that I have read on the subject, which I always reference in the description menu, combined with my own insights and reflections which have developed over time and are constantly evolving and growing. So having said that, we're going to begin this video talking about the cardinal signs, the 4 cardinal signs: Aries, Cancer, Venus, Libra, and Capricorn, and the minor arcana cards associated with them. So we saw the same diagram in the major arcana video where I talked about the 12 astrological signs representing the 3 modes of being: cardinal, fixed, and mutable. So in this video we're going to talk about the cardinals, cardinal signs. And the first cardinal sign beginning at the spring equinox is Aries. Aries marks the beginning of the spring season. So all cardinal signs, as we've said before, are concerned with beginning, the beginning of a new season. They mark the beginning of the new season. So cardinal signs representing beginnings, initiation, are allotted to the 3 first numbered cards and symbolize the initial phases of the journey into the suit. So with Aries, we have, that's a cardinal fire sign. We have the suit of wands, which give us the 2, 3, and 4 of wands. Aries corresponds to the Emperor card, and Mars as the principle of destruction, regeneration, aggression, assertion is our Tower card. So these 2 cards, the Emperor and the Tower, kind of set the stage or the background of the first 3 decans of Aries. Mars rules the 3 decans, so therefore the entire sign of Aries. And these 2 cards kind of set the stage for our first 3 cards, the 2, 3, and 4 of wands. Aries is the passionate warrior god who is eager to take on challenges and start new projects. And as the ruler of Aries, the god of war presides over the first house of the self, which we saw in the Major Arcana video. And here in the first 3 decans, we are concerned with issues of leadership, self-assertion, dominion, passion, and vitality. So the first decan of Aries is ruled by Mars, and it represents the 2 of Wands. So Mars is here in the first decan in his own sign. Mars in Aries is in dignity or rulership. So whenever a planet is in its own sign, it's called being in rulership. And here, Mars in Aries gets a lot of power and potency being in its own sign. The planet Mars, as we said, is the principle of assertion and aggression, passion and desire, and is the forward-moving energy of action. Here, Mars in its own sign is a leader, is confident, pioneering, independent, self-assertive, and has a lot of willpower and drive. The Golden Dawn creators of this card called it the Lord of Dominion. Mars here is ambitious, he knows what he wants, and he's determined to go for it fearlessly and courageously. He's ready to conquer the world. So we can almost picture this man here holding the globe as the emperor himself, who stands really proudly and confidently on the tower. We see he's standing on the tower, holding the globe. So he's got the world in his hands, somewhat resembling this orb that the emperor also holds in his hands. And in part 3 video of this series, we looked at polarities. We looked at the idea that each sign carries within itself aspects of its polar opposite. We looked at the sign of Libra, the 7th archetype, being opposite Aries, ruled by Mars, Libra, ruled by Venus. Venus ruling the 7th house of relationship, directly across Aries, ruling the 1st house of the self. So we can find this idea of polarities actually in the color symbolism throughout the tarot as well. Here we see that he's holding a globe that's red and green, and then also in this 2nd decan card, which we'll come to in a minute, the 3 of Wands, there's the red outfit, red robe, and the green shawl. So Mars is known as the red planet, and green is the color of the heart chakra associated with Venus, the planet of peace, love, and harmony. The color green is actually a complementary color to the color red on the color wheel. And so here, to me, it's as if the warrior Mars carries the potential for both violence and peace within him wherever he goes. The astrologer Caroline Casey reminds us that without Venus to keep him in check, Mars goes rampant. And I really like that, because that idea of balance. And again, here we have the number 2. So right here on the bottom, we also have 2 roses and 2 lilies. Now, the white lilies represent thought, and roses representing passion. There is this idea of the balance and integration of the 2 opposites. Balance between desire and wisdom, passion and thought, and then Libra being the sign of thinking, the air sign, the cardinal air sign, opposite the fire sign, the sign ruled by the warrior, the god of war. And that's all I'm going to say about the Two of Wands. Now, okay, we can still keep the Emperor here because we have Aries. The next card is the Three of Wands, second decan of Aries. And here, the second decan of Aries is ruled by the Sun, which is our Sun card here. So the Sun is at the center of our solar system. And in astrology, as we saw earlier, it is the center of the self, representing the ego and the will. The brilliant Sun is exalted in Aries. So here the Sun is treated like an honored guest. Being exalted in Aries, the Sun gets strength and shines brightly in this position, in the second decan. The Sun, of course, is very happy here in the fiery sign of Aries, where it can shine its glory with confidence and pride. And one can almost feel the magnificence and glory of the Sun in this landscape here, because we see this sort of golden landscape. Water looks like it's gold, water reflected. The whole entire sky looks really yellow. It's like the sky glows with this intense yellow color, and the golden sea is reflecting the light of the Sun. I really see that here in this card. I really see and feel the presence of the Sun. The combination of Sun, Emperor, and Mars, of course, because Mars, as we said, rules the entire sign of Aries, gives this card that much more power and strength. The Golden Dawn creators of this card called it the Lord of Established Strength. Honors, gifts, pride, the achievement of goals, creativity, optimism, power, strength, wealth. All of these are some of the traits that the Sun brings with it to Aries when it visits Aries. In the complete guide to the tarot, Eden Gray gives the following keywords as divinatory meanings of this card, which I feel tie in beautifully with what I just said. She says nobility, wealth, power, established strength, caution against pride and arrogance. So the Sun is leaving, and now we have another visitor in Aries. We have the Empress, Venus, visiting the third decan of Aries, which gives us the Four of Wands. So you can imagine, right now we're in the spring season. Spring is in the air, and the Empress is visiting the Emperor. What kind of energy does this create? Maybe a time for celebration, and we can see this clearly illustrated in the image we have here of the Four of Wands, that energy of celebration. We have the garlands of celebration hanging on top of the Four Wands, and the two maids getting ready for the event. So the planet Venus, which we saw earlier, ruling Libra and Taurus, the fixed earth sign of Taurus, she represents two different aspects. In Taurus, she rules over sensual pleasures and the comforts of life, and in Libra, she's the goddess of love, beauty, refined beauty, art, harmony, aesthetics, and everything fine and beautiful. So here she's in Empress. The Empress card in Taurus is very earthy, whereas in Venus, she's very sophisticated beauty. Venus as a planet represents the principle of relating and desire. And here she's visiting her lover in myth, Aries. So she's bringing romance to the third decan of Aries and beautifies the energy of this card. The Golden Dawn creators of this card called Venus in this decan Lord of perfected work. As the goddess of beauty and the arts steps into the sign of brash Aries, she brings refinement and harmony into the sign. Corinne Kenner, in her book Tarot and Astrology, says, the Four of Wands is the card of the dance. It's a metaphor for collaboration and cooperation. In a tarot reading, the Four of Wands often symbolizes a marriage or a partnership. That's what she says. And I think that's really interesting, the card of the dance, because a while back I remember witnessing this kind of dance of Venus and Mars in one of my astrology classes. One of my teachers was demonstrating in using a software the planets Mars and Venus and the patterns they make as they transit around the zodiac wheel. And it actually looks like, when you're watching that, it looks like Mars and Venus are doing a dance. You see them kind of moving towards each other and then moving away and then coming together again. And I think it's pretty amazing. Their actual pattern in the sky creates this dance. So I love what Corinne Kenner says. It is like a dance where these two opposing energies are coming together, going apart. They attract each other, really, in a way, and then they come together and go apart. Anyway, that was really cool watching that. So that was the sign of Aries. We're finished with the 2s, 3s, and 4s. Now we're going into the sign of Cancer, the cardinal water sign of Cancer. So Cancer is a cardinal water sign, and associated to the 2 of Cups, first decan of Cancer, 3 of Cups, second decan of Cancer, and 4 of Cups, third decan of Cancer. The entire sign of Cancer is ruled by the Moon, which is the High Priestess card. And the sign of Cancer corresponds to the Chariot card. And so we have here issues with nurturing, protection, wisdom of the Mother Goddess, the High Priestess, and the emotional persistence and strength of the Chariot card, protective home of the Cancer. So that kind of paints the background of these 3 first cards. And we have the cardinal sign of Cancer, which marks the beginning of the summer at the summer solstice and the beginning phases of an emotional endeavor, an emotional journey. So for the first card, 2 of Cups, our visitor in this decan, the first decan, is Venus. Venus in Cancer, and the Empress card. So when the romantic goddess of love and harmony visits the sensitive, emotional, watery sign of Cancer, we get the 2 of Cups. Cancer is ruled by the sensitive Moon and governs over the 4th house of family and home. When Venus visits this sign, love is equally shared and enjoyed. So the energy of intimacy and sentimental affection is filled here in the energy of the 2 of Cups. Now, Venus and the Moon are the quintessential feminine planets of the zodiac. And together, they kind of combine this idea of love and union, which we can see in this card. And the Moon connects us to the soul. So this image of the soul could also signify the union of soulmates, which we sometimes associated with the 2 of Cups. Venus, as the goddess of beauty, rules over the pleasures and the comforts of life, pleasures of the senses, and as we said, the principle of relating, desire, and attraction. Here, the Empress feels really comfortable and secure in the sign of Cancer, with her host, the emotional, nurturing, wise, and protective Mother Moon as the High Priestess and the ruler of the Chariot. So the energy of this environment allows for the potential of nurturing and harmonious relationships, the perfect setting for the beginning of an emotional journey. With the number 2 again, of course, we have the balancing and integrating concept of opposites, the moon indicating our needs, what we need to feel comforted and nurtured, versus Venus, our desires and values. So there's needs versus values, comforts and security versus love and attraction here. So those are some things to think about in relation to this card. So there is actually quite a lot of symbolism embedded in this Two of Cups card, which I can't get into for reasons of time. But if you do get a copy of the 36 Faces by Austin Kapok, he goes through a lot more in depth in the symbolism of this card in particular, and it's really interesting. So now the Empress is leaving Cancer, and we have a new visitor, the Magician, and that is for the second decan of Cancer, which gives us the Three of Cups. All right, so I would like to begin here by reading a paragraph from the 36 Faces for you, which kind of, I think, links the first to the second and begins in a beautiful way. In the first decan of Cancer, the tender bonds of intimacy are established. In the second, the fragile duet is incubated. In this decan come images of beauty, joy, and wealth, for these occur naturally when a matter is properly nurtured. Yet nurturing is insufficient. What is precious must be protected. The second face of Cancer is like a walled garden in which something precious is kept. The greenhouse exists here to nurture what is beautiful and exotic but fragile. The comfort and joy which occurs in such a place cannot occur without protection. In this decan, we see the protective, guiding power of the Mother Goddess. Rare pleasures grow in such gardens, yet trials and labors are equally nutritive for the developing soul. The great secret of this face is the power of right incubation. So Mercury, the shapeshifter, rules Gemini and Virgo, as we saw in the Major Arcana video. And in Gemini, Mercury loves to socialize and party. He's always ready for a party. And he has a kind of youthful and childlike curiosity. As a shapeshifter, he's always happy to mimic whatever energy surrounds him. And here, in the motherly sign of Cancer, he's being spoiled with lots of love and affection. And then there is the other side of Mercury, Mercury in Virgo. And Virgo, as we saw in the Major Arcana video, is the sign of the harvest season. And here we have plenty of fruits and vegetables, symbolizing a time of abundance. And then the presence of the pumpkin here reminds me of Thanksgiving, traditionally celebrated to give thanks for the bountiful harvest of the season. Mercury in the second decan of Cancer is traditionally called, by the Golden Dawn creators of this card, Lord of Abundance. Mercury is the god of speed and transportation, also known as the god of commerce. The word merchant comes from Mercury. The god of commerce and exchange, ruling over communication and sibling relationships. Could it be that these three women are sisters? Some tarot readers believe that the three maidens or sisters depicted here celebrating together represent the three graces: splendor, mirth, and good cheer. Hermes, the youthful magician, rules over speech, and here in the tender loving sign of Cancer, the sound of sweet laughter fills the walled garden. The high priestess graces Mercury with unconditional love and allows for his youthful spirit to ripen and incubate. Going forward, Mercury is leaving the second decan of Cancer, and we enter into the fourth decan of Cancer, Four of Cups, and here our ruler of this decan is the moon herself. Now, here the moon gets a lot of power because Cancer, as we said, is ruled by the moon, right? So this is a card where I feel is a shadow aspect of moon in Cancer. And it actually took me a long time to come up with a real understanding of the astrological correspondence of this card. So let me explain what I mean by this card representing a lower octave or shadow aspect of the moon in Cancer. The moon, being the planet representing our deep-seated emotions, can be highly temperamental in the watery world of Cancer. One of the shadows of the moon in Cancer is that it can be very moody. It can hold on to resentments and easily fall into victim mentality or feelings of self-pity. So one way that this behavior can manifest is by brooding or getting stuck in our emotions, kind of sitting in our own little corner in dejection, completely closing ourselves off from receiving the goodness that surrounds us. Getting almost so incredibly caught up in our internal emotional battles, so much that we feel stagnant, alone, and isolated, not noticing this beautiful golden cup being offered to us from the heavens. The moon in the third decan of Cancer is traditionally called Lord of Blended Pleasure, or Luxury by Aleister Crowley. Now, I once heard an Indian guru say that self-pity is a luxury. And when I heard that, it immediately made me think of the name associated to this card, which is luxury. And it kind of connects to what I was also saying earlier. Now, before going further, I wanted to spend a little more time just talking about the symbolism of the number 4 in relation to the elements. I feel like this will help to kind of further understand why it is that we have the sort of stuck or fixed quality when it comes to the 4 of Cups and also the 4 of Pentacles, but not so much with the 4 of Wands or 4 of Swords. So this is just quickly the 4 of Pentacles. So when it comes to the elements in astrology, we have the 4 elements, of course, fire, water, air, and earth. Fire, water, air, and earth, right? With earth and water having a yin, feminine, or receptive quality, and the element of air as having a sort of masculine, yang, projective quality. And the nature of the number 4 itself suggests structure and order, having a general fixed or solid quality to it. When we combine the number 4 with the yin quality of water, the energy here becomes more slow moving, even more slow moving, more stagnant, you could say. Now, water and earth are tangible physical elements as opposed to fire and air. So we can see how that can create an energy of stagnation in the Four of Cups as well as the Four of Pentacles, whereas combined with the yang elements of fire and air, the overall active energy is toned down, but it's not stagnant like we saw in Four of Wands, and we will see in the Four of Swords. It's more of a calmer energy of that yang, whereas here it can be kind of stuck or stagnant. And we will come back to the Four of Pentacles. So that is for the cardinal sign of water. So the cardinal air sign of Libra corresponds to the 2, 3, and 4 of Swords. Libra corresponds to the Justice card. And Venus rules Libra, Venus as the Empress. So here, the Empress and Libra paint the backdrop of the 3 decans of Libra and our 3 first minor arcana cards. Here in these 3 decans, we are concerned with issues of Libra, which have to do with balance, harmony, fairness, justice, peace, decision-making, commitments, relationships of all kinds, marriage, marital contracts, as well as the law, which is ruled by Libra. So the first card we're going to look at is the 2 of Swords, corresponding to the first decan of Libra. And here in this decan, we have our first visitor, the Moon, High Priestess card. So we know that all air signs are concerned with the concept of duality. And in Libra, we have just crossed the boundary between the bottom half of the zodiac wheel over to the top. So the bottom is the subjective houses from 1 to 6, and then the objective houses from 7 to 12 are on the top. So we've just crossed this boundary here. And so as we step into the 7th house of relationships in Libra, we are becoming aware of the other for the first time. And we are gaining an awareness of the other, which is described really beautifully here in this illustration of the Justice card. So again, thinking about polarities, we can think of the sign of Libra as having this active force of Mars within it as the ruler of Libra's opposite sign, Aries. In the Wisdom of Tarot, Paul Foster Case says about the Justice card, equilibrium is not the cessation of action, not something static, but the constant and reciprocal action between pairs of opposites. So here also we have the colors green and red, as we saw in the Suit of Wands, that representing Venus and Mars. So Libra then, as the Justice, as the sign ruling over the first 3 decans of Libra, decans of air, is going to kind of color the atmosphere of all of the cards that we're going to look at in the first 3 decans. So this idea of balance is felt throughout the decans in the 3 cards. So getting back to our moon as the new visitor here, we have the watery emotional moon in the cardinal air sign of Libra, in the objective sign of Libra. And we know that the moon is both unconscious and the subconscious. It's our intuition and gut feelings. So Libra as the sign of balance, the objective air sign, combined with the moon's energy, gives us the sense that there is a need for the balancing of mind with the emotions here, as well as paying attention to the deeper gut feelings. The fact that this woman is blindfolded can certainly point us to the influence of the moon and the high priestess here, as the need to go within and pay attention to the intuition. Now, I want to read you again an opening paragraph for this first decan of Libra from the book 36 Faces. I think it beautifully describes this influence of the moon of this card, as well as the connection to the justice in Libra. Beneath a crescent moon, a blindfolded woman sits before the seashore, holding a pair of crossed swords before her. Several elements of this card allude to an as yet unconscious force. That it is night places the scene beneath the threshold of waking consciousness. And the shining sliver of the moon and the presence of the ocean confirm it. The blindfold also attests to this reading, yet the blindfold serves another purpose in this image. It constructs a resemblance between the woman and Justice herself. For Justice, like the woman pictured, is commonly depicted wearing a blindfold, a white robe, and holding a sword. Perhaps it is Justice herself who has dragged herself from the deep and has come to sit upon the wet shores. I love that paragraph. In Libra, we are concerned with the balancing of the two sides of any given circumstance. And in the Two of Swords, just like the woman in the Justice card, we are considering the two sides of a situation or a decision at its very beginning phases. Again, the cardinal sign. Next, we have our favorite card of the swords, the Three of Swords. And we can guess maybe which planet is visiting here. If you know the planets, and if you've heard of Saturn, this is Saturn in Libra. Now, Saturn, as we saw in the Major Arcana card, is associated to the World card. And I'm going to include the Devil as well. The Devil is Capricorn, and Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. Now, to me, the World is, and I'll talk about this in a moment, a higher octave of what Saturn represents, and then the Devil is kind of a lower octave of the shadow aspect of Saturn, and we'll talk about both of these. So Saturn here in the second decan of Libra is the ruler here, and Saturn is known as the taskmaster, and in the sign of Libra, he's actually exalted. He gets a lot of power in this sign. When a planet is exalted in a sign, the planet shines and feels good, feels really comfortable there. When Saturn, Father Time, visits the sign of relationships, he has a few lessons in store for the goddess of love. The cards we have here, Justice for Libra and the Empress and the World card and the Devil, kind of all can help us gain more lessons that this card can provide. So Saturn is the god of structure, boundaries, restrictions. He is traditionally known as the great malefic, and called the Old Man. And he brings with him lessons that come only from experiencing the harshness of reality. Whenever he visits and whatever he touches, there are hard lessons to be learned and a lot of work to be done. We may experience delays, limitations, burdens, separation, pain and sadness, loss, old age, and so on and so forth. But once we learn the lessons Saturn has in store for us, we come out stronger, wiser, and more experienced. We become masters of our own lives. Saturn helps us to come in terms with life's cycles in order to become more whole and complete. With Saturn, we learn to become masters of our lives. So here, Saturn has a tough lesson for our romantic Venus here, the goddess of love, the Empress, who likes to be comfortable and, likes to enjoy life. She must learn here that hearts get broken, emotional storms may come, but then the sky eventually gets clear. It reminds me of one of my favorite lines from Barbara Moore in the Silver Witchcraft Tarot. She says, "Pain comes and pain goes." That's what she says about this card, the Three of Swords. Pain comes and pain goes. And Saturn teaches us about the cycles of our feelings and the cycles of life. That there is always going to be storms and pain, but it doesn't last forever. Again, these are the initial phases of an experience. Once we've learned the difficult life lessons from Saturn, the Lord of Karma, he requires that we put the past behind us in order to heal and move forward. I want to read you a line or a paragraph from the Herbal Tarot Guidebook, as I think this is a fantastic delineation of Saturn in the sign of Libra. And as I read this, see if you can hear echoes of the astrological correspondences in relation to what we have just discussed about Saturn and the objective sign of Libra and the 7th house of relationships. Because oftentimes when I read guidebooks about specific cards, I can't help but see the astrological associations embedded within them. So here it goes. There is a need to heal past relationships. Sadness, depression, and memories of difficult separation are in one's thoughts and need to be released. Learning how to relate to others without losing oneself is important. This may be a time to become more objective towards the emotions, and there is a need for balance between the mind and the emotions. Again, that need for balance between the mind and the emotions here comes through, even though in the Two of Swords, where we saw the moon, that was more apparent. Again, that we are dealing with that need to balance and be objective here. So now, I think that's enough for this card. Let's go to the next card, which is the Four of Swords, and this is the last decan of Libra, the third decan of Libra, which is associated to Jupiter. Now here's a different energy altogether. So Jupiter is the Wheel of Fortune card, Jupiter in Libra. Here we have the expansive, excuse me, the expansive planet of Jupiter. And Jupiter is traditionally called the Great Benefic, so quite opposite from Saturn. And after a harsh visit from Father Time, now the goddess of love is relieved to be hosting the optimistic and jovial Jupiter. The Golden Dawn designers of this card called Jupiter in Libra the Lord of Rest from Strife. So after a time of emotional storms, Jupiter arrives to save the day with the blessings of a period of rest and harmony. And the peace-loving Libra is very happy about this. When I began studying tarot, I remember learning that when thinking about the meaning of a card, it's important to remember the card that comes before it and immediately after it. So when we draw the Three of Swords, it's nice to know that after Saturn is gone, Jupiter is just around the corner. The astrologer Caroline Casey compares the energy of Jupiter with that of Saturn wonderfully in this paragraph, which I want to read for you to give you a sense of these two different energies here. When Saturn's mudras or body postures are often with closed fists, Jupiter's are with open hands. If Saturn's construct for reinventing reality was, I used to, ... but now I, ... Jupiter's counterpart is the art form of the blessing, or borderline Blarney. When this, ... then may that, ... Celtic poet John O'Donoghue speaks of the Celtic art form of the blessing. When your boat is sinking in rough waters, may a moon beam a silver pathway upon which you may safely tread to shore. O'Donoghue says that one of the greatest blessings we can bestow upon a friend in distress is to imagine for them the pastures of peace that will be once the searing pain is past. Isn't that beautiful? I had to share that with you. So here, when the Wheel of Fortune visits the Empress and the Justice card, Jupiter is bestowing his gifts of generosity and blessings of hope. He helps us to come out of the Three of Swords and remember the bigger picture. So remember when I talked about Jupiter helping us see the bigger picture and finding meaning in our situations or everyday events. So now let's look at some of the symbolism in this card. The fact that the man is resting inside a church points to Jupiter as well, because Jupiter rules the 9th house of philosophy, travel, education, and religion. He rules over our belief systems and is also the planet of spirituality, traditionally ruling Sagittarius as well as Pisces. There is an affinity between the 7th house of Libra and the 9th house of Sagittarius as well. The 7th house of relationships, marriage, and all kinds of contracts, as well as courtrooms and lawyers. That's the 7th house. And then the 9th house rules over laws and judges. So there is that relationship between those two houses as well. And Sagittarius, as we know, corresponds to the Temperance card. And again, here echoing this idea of balance and integration. So we can see how that kind of comes together. And then lastly, looking at the color symbolism of the Justice card, we have we said the red and green and the purple and yellow. I want to read you an insight into this from a quote by Paul Foster Case in the Wisdom of Tarot. He says, "The color of the cape is green, referring to Venus, and also to the color of the sign Libra. The robe is red, complementary to green, symbolizing Mars. The background and curtains illustrate the law of polarity by contrasting colors. The background is yellow, the color attributed to air. The curtains are violet, which is complementary to yellow. Violet is the color attributed to Jupiter, and the curtains refer to the mechanism of cosmic activity represented by the Wheel of Fortune, because that mechanism, to some extent, veils the operation of life breath, the air being life breath, color yellow. So I'll leave you with that to contemplate on. And we're going to go to the next 3 cards corresponding to Capricorn, Earth, Cardinal Earth sign of Capricorn. So moving on to the last, this is the last cardinal sign. the sign of Capricorn, the mountain goat, it's the devil card that we just saw, and Saturn as the world card. Here featured as the highest octave of Saturnian energy, that mastery over the self, mastery of the four elements, and being in the center of that mastery. Saturn and Capricorn rule the 10th house of the public. So we saw the 4th house of Cancer as the house of home and family, right across the house of the public, the outer world, the outside world, career, vocation, the physical material world, and the role that we play in it. So Capricorn rules over the entire sign of Capricorn, and we have the first 3 decans of Capricorn allotted to the 2 of Pentacles, the 3 of Pentacles, and the 4 of Pentacles. So in this phase, in this sign, in these 3 cards, we are concerned with the issues of Capricorn. So where the earth sign of Taurus is concerned with the abundance of nature, Capricorn is the earth sign of structure, solidity, and the establishment of that structure. So we're going to look at the first decan of Capricorn, 2 of Pentacles, where we have our first visitor in the sign, who happens to be Jupiter again, the Wheel of Fortune. Now, here we have 2 opposing forces coming together, Jupiter and Saturn. Saturn, as we saw earlier, is the god of form, structure, restriction, limitation, and boundaries. Jupiter, on the other hand, is the god of expansion, growth, movement, and change. So we have these 2 polar opposites seeking harmony and integration in the 2 of Pentacles. Jupiter, the Wheel of Fortune, is the ruler of Sagittarius, and the Temperance card, the card of balance and bringing together the opposites. So the bringing together of 2 opposite things in one. And again, we see that mirroring in the 2 of Pentacles. The man in the 2 of Pentacles is caught in a juggling act, trying to balance these 2 very opposite forces, 2 opposite energies here. Sagittarius, as we know, is a mutable sign. And Jupiter, as the ruler of Sagittarius, is flexible, adaptable, and welcomes change, while Saturn, as the ruler of Capricorn, resists change and likes to cling to the old ways of doing things. Saturn is the serious god of time, as we talked about, discipline, order, stability. Jupiter is the enthusiastic planet of endless possibilities. And Jupiter helps us to discover opportunities, find meaning in our circumstances, and, like I keep saying, see the bigger picture, while Saturn likes to do things the way they've always been done before in a more controlled manner. Jupiter's energy is that of fun and excitement and enjoying life, while Saturn wants to really get down to business and get the work done properly and the right way. Again, looking at the houses, the 10th house here, house of Capricorn, is where we are seen out there in the public. And so Capricorn rules our careers, ambitions, authority figures, and success in the material world, in the outside world. So I'm going to read you a paragraph from the book Tarot for the Healing Heart by Christine Jette. I'm going to read you actually the following keywords that she uses for the Two of Pentacles. And again, as I read, see if you can find the connections here with everything that I've just mentioned about Capricorn, Father Time, Saturn, restriction, Jupiter, adaptability, change, flow, balance, harmony. Okay, so she says, balance or the need for balance on the physical plane, juggling time, clinging to one position, failing to consider another viewpoint, adaptability, flexibility, skillful manipulation of many factors to achieve success. Now is the time to make changes in your life, but don't try to control the outcomes. Have some fun. You've been serious for too long. And then she asks questions. Am I able to balance work with play? How do I adapt to change? Again, this is just a quick example, just to show you how closely related the interpretations we typically read about in tarot guidebooks about tarot cards are to the astrological correspondences of them. And finally, on the card itself, I noticed the juxtaposition of forces of Saturn and Jupiter. So here we have in the background the waves of the ocean with the ships on the background on the waves, echoing the presence of the Wheel of Fortune, mirroring the ebbs and flows of life. And if you recall, the 9th house of Sagittarius rules over travel overseas. Next to this is a straight line representing the solidity of the physical concrete ground, the solidity of Saturn. So there's this idea of opposites again between solidity and structure versus movement, flow, and travel. I thought that was pretty beautiful here, and my camera doesn't focus very well, like not any better than this, but I'm sure you all know what this card looks like. And now we're going to go to the next card, which is a very fun card to look at, the Three of Pentacles. One of my favorite cards, actually. And one of the first cards I really got when I was learning tarot and astrology. So the second decan of Capricorn, Three of Pentacles, is Mars in Capricorn. Here we have Mars visiting the sign of Capricorn as the Tower. And Mars is actually exalted in Capricorn, so he gains potency and power in this sign. He shines here in the 10th house of Capricorn, at the highest point of the chart, right by the midheaven, where the house of vocation and the public world is. So the active energy of Mars here strives towards success, both personally, as Mars is a personal planet belonging to the first house of the self, and as a contribution to the society, because Saturn and Capricorn are concerned with society and the roles we play in the society. So here, the destructive force of Mars is channeled into constructive use, constructive or creative use. And here in this card, we can see that. As we saw Mars, he represents the principle of aggression, self-assertion, desire, and passion, and the drive to get things done. So he's really happy here and motivated to work hard. He's highly ambitious, he's a hard worker, and he's using the disciplined, persistent energy of Capricorn to focus and get the job done. In his book, The Astrology of Vocation, Brian Clark, the Australian astrologer and the author of The Celestial Tarot, writes, "A fulfilling vocation is the product of focus, discipline, hard work, effort, passion, and consciousness." So I like that because the passion of Mars really comes through here in this card. He is really working to create. and the success and goal-oriented Capricorn energy allows him to achieve out there in the world, transforming his desires into reality. So all the active fiery energy of Mars is focused and disciplined here to establish something real in the physical world, to manifest. The passionate Mars in Capricorn benefits by having this structure here to allow his potent energy to create amazing things. And I just want to show you one example here of the Three of Pentacles from the Fae Tarot. And there are so many. I don't want to do comparative tarot because then this video will be like 10 hours long, but I will do that sometime in the future because every time I look at different decks, I love looking at how they fit into the astrological correspondences as well. And here I see Mars as this fairy here working really hard, creating this relief sculpture. He's just carving this relief sculpture, so that's creative energy being channeled with a lot of fiery energy. Now I want to read you again the very first paragraph about this card, the Three of Pentacles, again from the 36 Faces. This phase shows images of what might be wrought upon the earth, blueprints as a type of revelation. From these images comes the necessity of gathering the resources and power to make the project real, the design manifest. Raw materials and talents are drawn toward the construction of the edifice. The mind, heart, and body take on the roles of the architect, taskmaster, and the laborer. The highly structured nature of this phase is evident in the tarot card allotted to it, the Three of Pentacles. It pictures three men inside a cathedral, two of them holding a blueprint inquiringly toward a third, which the pictorial key to the tarot tells us is the sculptor. Called material works in Book T, this card contains the essential formula of this phase, the laborious restructuring of the manifest world according to a deliberate plan or blueprint. I just thought that paragraph was very, very powerful to bring this all together. And to me, this man, this sculptor, as they call him, is Mars himself at work. He represents the higher octave of Capricorn energy, discipline, and true commitment to one's vocation or calling, the highest octave of Mars in Capricorn energy. I remember reading once somewhere, and I can't remember where, that true commitment is the combination of mind, body, and spirit. And as Paul Quinn, in his book Tarot for Life, beautifully puts it, the three figures in this card personify body, mind, and spirit in collaboration. So before going to the next decan, which to me is illustrative of the shadow aspect of Capricorn Saturn, I want to read you a few lines from The Essence of Magic by Mary K. Greer, where she beautifully describes the World card as the highest octave of Saturn. Saturn promises you that you can have all the bounty of the physical world, that you are in fact at its center, with its gifts at your disposal. This image describes how you locate yourself in time and space, the four seasons and directions, applying them with grace and precision. When you embody the world, others see you as dancing on your limitations, accepting boundaries, but also creating more than meets the eye. And now Mars leaves Capricorn, and we have another visitor here for the Four of Pentacles, that will be the Sun in Capricorn for Four of Pentacles. Now, recapping some of the keywords associated with Saturn as the world and devil, we have the physical world, the outer world, earthly material pleasures, success, high positions of authority, rules and regulations, control, order, structure, matter, and form. Then we have for the Sun card and the Strength card, corresponding to Leo, the Lion King, and its ruler, the Sun. So the Strength card for Leo. And the Sun in astrology symbolizes strength and power, radiance, drama, nobility, individuality, and the ego, confidence and overconfidence, or arrogance and pride. Those are all some of the keywords associated with the Sun in Leo. So I just wanted to point out something here, because this man is actually wearing a crown, and that kind of echoes the Leo, the Lion King energy here. And I want to read you again from the 36 Faces, a kind of an intro to this card. The scene in this face is the struggle for control between an individual and their world. So remember again, individual being the Sun, and Leo individuality, and then the world, the outside world, the Saturn. In the Rider-Waite-Smith version of this face, a man sits atop a city. His environment is his throne. Called Earthly Power by Book T, this card represents a position of mastery over one's environment, being in a position where one can regulate and order their portion of the world. The scene is most commonly associated with the planet assigned to it, the sovereign Sun. Sol shines steadily, subjecting the world cyclically to his radiant mandate. Yet one needs simply to flip the image of the king atop his throne for it all to come crashing down, burying him in an avalanche of matter. Only high places bring with them the danger of terrible falls. So that, to me, illustrates a pretty good example of the shadow aspect of the Sun in Capricorn, or one of the lower octave energies that can be associated with Saturn in Capricorn and this card. And I feel that this card actually does represent a lower octave of Sun in Capricorn, or just one of the ways that the shadow or the devil Capricorn aspect can manifest. The vibrant energy of the Sun is challenged and restricted in the sign of Capricorn. Saturn is the stern authority figure who is in charge of the sign and hosting the Sun here. And the Sun, of course, wants to shine and illuminate everything, and Saturn energy restricts, and here it kind of depresses the vitality of the Sun. So clinging and attachment to the material possessions is an aspect of the lower octave of Saturn. Excessive preoccupation with the possessions of the material world and worldly gains, which can leave one isolated and lonely. Combining the keywords for the Sun with Saturn, so we can come up with ego clinging, which can be seen in this card. And also the Sun in Capricorn enjoys being in high positions of authority, and in its lowest octave can reflect a sense of needing to be in a position of power in order to practice control, or a need for control by acquiring material possessions. or a need for approval or validation by acquiring physical things outside of ourselves. In the inner sky, Stephen Forrest says, ambitious, materialistic, power-hungry, the faceless gray flannel Capricorn of popular literature is a sly devil indeed, quick to exploit any weaknesses. It is typically represented as the epitome of slick, insidious opportunism. Such descriptions are fair pictures of Capricorn's shadow. Corinne Kenner in Tarot and Astrology says, the figure in the Four of Pentacles is cut off from friends, family, and neighbors while he single-mindedly works to manage and control his investments of money, time, and energy. You could even think of him as a more humanized version of the Capricorn devil, embracing the riches, rewards, and temptations of life in the physical world. And of course, we have, again, as I said, the energy of the number 4, energy of stagnation, being an earth element. And of course, the number 4 stands for order and structure. And here in this earth sign of Capricorn, it creates even more solidity, more fixed, stagnant quality that comes with this card. So this to say that these representations, these tarot representations, are a combination of astrology, numerology, and a whole range of things. But with the language of astrology, we may be able to get more insights and more in-depth view, or just to see how these energies can work for us when we're doing a reading. So I hope that this was useful for you today, and I hope you gained something from it. Please comment down below. Let me know what you think, and I'm looking forward to the next video of this series. And as always, thank you for watching. Cheeky in the background is saying yes, the video is finished. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Lots of love. Bye.